Hey, welcome back everyone to the Progressive Brothers Podcast. This is episode 58. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Progressive Brothers Podcast. Make sure you follow us on Twitter as well at brothers_podcast. So today's topic, conservatives' infatuation with the Taliban in Afghanistan and what this really means and where it all comes from and where it's going to be going. And so I'll give my take on this. The desire and the infatuation actually of the Taliban taking over Kabul this week is reminiscent of what happened on January 6th. And so the insurrection that happened on January 6th at the Capitol is seen as some form of relation as to what the Taliban did in Kabul. But there's some differences here, and let me point them out. One, the Taliban as an organization, as a political organization, is a nationalist movement within Afghanistan itself. And they are the indigenous people of the country itself. So those people go back years. They're not who the media wants them out to be, but they are the legitimate people of the country itself. They can go trace their lineage back thousands of years in Afghanistan. Many countries have invaded Afghanistan, and many countries have failed. I don't think there's ever been a success story to have come out of Afghanistan from a military conflict. The Taliban takes over the capital with very few shots fired, if any shots at all, and the president leaves the country. And they take control over the parliament itself, and people see that as a victory for them. But what the conservative movement in the United States is looking at this as the ambitions of taking over the Capitol and putting their dirty boots on politicians' desks and sitting inside the Senate chamber. They wanted the same outcome. And so they see the Taliban do this, and so they want the same sort of, the same sort of end goal of being in government. The only difference here is this. The Taliban, whether people like them or not, have a legitimate claim to their country because they are the indigenous people. They were not imported. They did not enslave anybody in order to get their in order to have a direct lineage to the country itself. On the other hand, the people who stormed the Capitol have a direct lineage to people who are not indigenous. Caucasian people are not indigenous to North America. They came from Europe. Whereas the Taliban, it's not like, they came from Germany and now they're taking over the Capitol. That didn't happen. And so when we have these conversations about the Taliban taking over and they're putting women inside their place, and in America, I guess we can learn something from this as black men. That's not true. There's nothing that can be learned from the Taliban that would benefit black men at all. We had Philando Castile, who was shot to death in Minneapolis, Minnesota, who was in possession of a firearm legally under the state's law, who was shot to death. I don't think that black men taking up arms and going to the Capitol is of some form of benefit. Now, the people who did storm the Capitol, they're looking at this as some kind of possible victory for them. So they could have a resurgence. But the point of the matter here is this. I don't see how anybody can actually have any sort of relation to the Taliban at this point. Because the same people who don't want black people voting are also the same people who have no problem storming the Capitol to try to overturn the election so that they can remain in political power illegally. The Taliban did not illegally enter the government. The government actually fled the country. The president of Afghanistan left maybe 4 hours before, or maybe 8 hours before the Taliban showed up. So they assume as the majority party of the country, political power over the state itself. They have a right to do that. It's within their constitution, their constitutional rights. And if they want to have a referendum, that's fine. But in the United States, the storming of the Capitol was the wrong way to do it. If they wanted to have a peaceful transfer of power, they could have easily had gone to the ballot and voted, just like everybody else's democracy does. And so, no, there will be no outcome in the United States similar to that of the Taliban. That's just not going to happen. I think that it's a pie in the sky. It's a fantasy. And anybody who thinks that that's the most diligent way to go about this doesn't really understand the history of this country, doesn't understand the history of Afghanistan, and definitely is not concerned in democratic outcomes. Like, share, and subscribe. Also follow us on Twitter at brothers_podcast.